Hello, everyone, and welcome to Justified Jewel Podcast. I'm so glad that you decided to join us for today. I am your host, Joanne Cox, and we've been doing a series on different type of political things that we believe that you should know. And what my point is on this particular podcast is to educate you to find out where your piece of the puzzle is fitting in and that you do have a word. And because of that, I have a guest that is the same guest through all of the segments that are here to tell us his background today and let us know why is it that he knows so much in this political arena. I would like to welcome today Bryant Winters. Bryant, welcome again.
Hi, Joanne. Thanks for having me back again. Always good to talk with you.
Yes. And so tell us, why do you know this and why is it that we're doing this segment after segment? Why?
History is fascinating. There are so many interesting stories there, so many lessons we can learn, and so many things that are relevant to what's going on in America today. Many things go in cycles. And so you had asked in one of these earlier episodes about the word populist. And so I was hoping today we could talk more about that.
Let's dive in.
Okay. So the word populist, this is one of these words that we actually know where it was invented. It was invented on a train in May of 1891 in Kansas. And there was a group of people that had just come from the convention for the founding of the People's Party. And they needed a way to describe themselves the way we talk about Republicans and Democrats. They wanted a shorter phrase than a People's Partyist or something like that. And so one of the people knew a little bit of Latin and came up with the word populist. And so for many years, that when you talked about the word about populists, you were talking about someone who was a member of the People's Party. And its use has expanded since then and grown a little bit broader. It's become more generic, but that's where the word came from.
Okay. So now that we know where the word came from, what does it mean? And do we want to be a populist? Why would we?
Well, the reason it came up, right, is as to remind your viewers, is my name's Brian, and I'm trying to get voters in the midterms to collectively bargain for passage of a legislative package called the Populist Act. And in my case, Populist is an acronym. It stands for the Partnership of Ordinary People Undermining Lobbyist Influence for Societal Transformation. But you asked the question, what did the populist stand for? And this is what I said, history goes in cycles lots of times. So back at the end of the 19th century, it was the first Gilded Age, and the Populist Party was formed. The People's Party. The People's Party was formed because government wasn't being responsive to their needs. Big businesses, big corporations, trusts were controlling things and taking advantage, let's say, of consumers, and the money supply was out of whack, and though it was squeezing the people at the bottom of the economic ladder. And they had a number of other issues too, but those were three of the big ones, and they are very relevant to what we're experiencing in 2026.
And when we think about this and when we find out what our actions are, let's talk about being a populist and to understand the division that we have now with the red and blue, and how we can unify ourselves and what do we need to do to be in control and say, I have a voice. What are my steps?
Absolutely. So there's a populist on both the left and on the right. Populists these days is sort of described as people who distrust the elites who are sort of running the system, and have a distrust of big corporations and recognize that it's not to the benefit of the average American, just getting squeezed by those corporations. And so in the U.S. Senate today, we have, in the Republican Party, Senator Josh Hawley, who has put forward various bills like to break up the big tech companies. And then on the left side, we have Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's put forward bills like to stop Wall Street looting And both of those things have been incorporated into the Populist Act, bringing together some of these ideas from both the left and the right end of the spectrum. And so, as I use the word populist, I bring it back to it's the People's Party. And so the people means everyone, it means the 100%, not for the benefit of any particular group, but to benefit everyone. And so the Populist Act has many universal policies designed to lift everybody up.
I think that's the most important line right there. It's the People's Party. And let's give us a few lines from the preamble so that we know what our rights are and why I have a voice.
Absolutely. So the preamble to the Constitution lists 5 duties for us as Americans, both individually and collectively. And so it says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
And, you know, most of us had that in high school somewhere. And did it have that meaning for us? Because at that time we weren't a voting age. So we had to learn that. Or I'm going to say memorized it because we did not keep that in our heart to understand we have a voice and that we can do something about it. And the average person feels like they're solo and they're in this all alone and they have no voice, and it doesn't matter whether they vote or not. It doesn't matter whether they go to meetings. It doesn't matter whether they're going to stand behind you to say that, you know, now I know better. As they say, when you know better, you do better. That is what we're wanting to promote because we didn't know some of these things before. And now let us step out and speak and vote and say, this is what I want. And this is no longer the way I want to live. And collectively, we can make changes. There is hope in our voting. There is hope in what we're asking for. So please step up because we want to speak, we want to vote, and we want to just make sure that we're going to the right people and asking for the right things because you can't get any answers if you don't know what to ask. And this is what Brian and I are bringing to the table now. And with that being said, Brian, what is it that we want to step out for in this voting? I want to just make sure that people know that we are in North Carolina.
We are, yes.
Mhm.
Actually, can I swing back to the original
Sure.
People's Party and
Yes.
talk a little how things worked out for them? As
Yes.
I think we've talked about before, the United States has a two-party system, always has, always and always will, as long as elections are single winner. And so the People's Party, like I said, was founded in 1891. In the 1892 election, they got over 1 million votes. Their candidate for president um, across the country. 1 million people voted for them. Mostly men in the state of Wyoming. Women were allowed to vote, and some women voted for the populist candidate there too. Yeah, and so they had like 8% of the vote, and they won some governors. They carried 5 states. They got some electoral votes. They did pretty well. Well, there was a congressman in Nebraska named William Jennings Bryan, and in 1896 he decided to run for president. And he was a young man. He was a very powerful orator. I don't think Toastmasters was around back then, but he probably would have been able to give some good speeches if he'd had a Toastmasters club to go to. And so in 1896 at the Democratic National Convention, he gave his Cross of Gold speech, criticizing America's reliance on the gold standard, and he unseated the sitting president of the United States who was running for re-election. He managed to win the Democratic nomination for president. And because he had taken up one of the signature planks of the People's Party, which was addressing the monetary problems by bringing silver into the monetary system, the populists had to make a choice. Should they run their own candidate, or should they support William Jennings Bryan and the Democrats to try and get their big idea to change national policy? And so the Populists decided in 1896 to endorse William Jennings Bryan. And so between the Populists and the Democrats, they brought this issue to the people, and they lost. The Republicans, William McKinley, won the election of 1896. And sorry, you asked why I love history so much, and it's the interesting stories like this, Joanne, which was
Yes.
until 2024, 1896 was the most expensive presidential election as a percentage of GDP. That McKinley's Republican friends who profited from the status quo poured so much money in the campaign to help him defeat William Jennings Bryan. And yeah, it was a really big election, and it didn't go the way of the populists. So that was sort of the end of the populists as a whole. Once they'd sort of thrown their support to one of the major parties, they really couldn't be independent too much. Anything you want to add there? And then I have another a little bit more about the populists and why they're relevant today.
I'd like to sort of backtrack, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, but you say it was one of the most expensive elections.
It
What
was
what made it so expensive?
that the wealthy who were had the most to lose if William Jennings Bryan and the populists would have won the 1896 election. They put a lot of money into making sure that that McKinley won the race. And again, as a percentage of GDP, the 1896 election was the most expensive up until 2024. Remember
Oh,
too that at the end of the 19th century, this is what we call the first Gilded Age. This was this time of great wealth and equality, and we're in the second Gilded Age now. I think we've talked about this
mhm.
before. So the wealthy had a lot more money to throw around, sort of like they do today, to influence politics.
Yes, and that's what I was about to bring up. So it's nothing any different than what we're going through right now. The more money you have, the more you put out, and you're trying to get your way, and you take that leverage away from the common people like us because we don't have that to put in. And it looks like they're doing a great job, but we know that because we didn't have the money, that it would be a landslide. And that is something that we're talking about right now that we want to put a stop to. Just because we don't have the cash flow doesn't mean that we don't have a voice. And that is what, again, I would say repeatedly, is that we have to know that we still have a voice because we have to unite. And this is what this is about. And that's no matter what conversation we go through and what episode we go through, it's the same thing. It's still about who has the cash. We have to keep talking about how we unite in this decision because all of us, I take that back, that's a blanket statement. Most of us are going for the same thing, and that's wanting equality and what it looks like to the average person. Now, I know you want to get back into that definition of populist and redefine, and I know you have many more steps to let us know. So take it away, Brian.
Well, what I wanted to talk about was how the populists were successful, and that was through a practice called fusion. And so what they would do is where the Republicans and Democrats were sort of evenly split in a state, that they would affiliate with one party or the other and cross endorse them, so that together the populists and the weaker party could overpower the stronger party and win elections. And so across the South, they typically partnered with the Republicans to defeat the Democrats who were in charge in the South. And then in other parts of the country, they partnered with Democrats to defeat the Republicans. So they established themselves as a group of principled voters who are willing to support both. They weren't the red team and blue team back then, but the Republicans and Democrats. And so, Joanne, that's a similar model to what I'm proposing for the United States today, which is an independent block of voters working
Mm-hmm.
on principles and being willing to work with both the red team and the blue team to help America live up to its full potential.
And that at that time was called fusion. Is that the correct word?
That's
Fusion.
correct.
And
And
I think what we're wanting to make sure that people understand we're not trying to come up with this third party. We're just saying that it's not about just the red and the blue. And you don't vote just out of loyalty. You vote because of what people stand for and what they're going to do for you. If we thought about what we were going to get out of it, and as we always say, let's look at the end result up front. And if we start to do that, that means that what am I looking for? What is it that I want to cast away? What are the changes that's going to make a difference between my neighborhood and my family and healthcare? And you think of all of those things, and then you come up with this fusion that is about the principalities of everything. And you've done a great job of explaining how that works. So if you don't have any more on that, were they successful? The answer is yes, they were. And to just move on to the ideas of the Populist Act.
Yeah, and so the way that they were successful is their ideas kind of got folded into the Democratic Party, into their big tent. Well, so but as we just said, a lot of the issues that the United States was facing during the first Gilded Age, we're facing them again in the second Gilded Age, and so the Populist Act addresses many of those same issues. It would fix our monetary system so that we can create a trickle-up economy that benefits all of us instead of what we have now, which is an economy that benefits the wealthy disproportionately. It would address the big concentrations of power by breaking up the big tech companies and the big healthcare conglomerates and the media empires, so that they would be smaller, they'd be more competitive, and that competition would bring prices down for people. And then the third thing, it would make government more responsive by unionizing as voters, by collectively bargaining outside of the two-party system. We can seize control of the gears of legislative machinery, and make Washington D.C. work for the average person again.
And so we stand behind you. You are going to be that spokesperson for us.
I mean, I'm willing to serve in that role, but it's not about me. Well,
It's
so
about all of us, but
it
we have
is.
to, we yeah, and that's what we're saying. It's about all of us. But you're writing these 2,000 pages that we knew nothing about, and that what we're wanting to say is put into words that we know what title it goes under. Those are things that the average person do not know, and they don't know how to voice that. So I want them to be educated in that way, so that people that know the history know what we're looking for, know the verbiage of how we're going to make these steps take place, and that DC will hear our voice.
We can do that. So on October 30th, I'm going to release a list of 470 endorsements. It's the Populist Fusion Slate, one endorsement for every congressional race. And I'm asking people to vote with me. You can learn more on my website, votewithbrian.com. And Joanne, thank you again for having me today.
Okay, and I want you to say that again, because normally you would have that where we can communicate with you. Say it again so they can write it down, Brian.
Yes, you can learn more about my campaign about how we can upgrade America's social contract in 2026 on my website, votewithbrian.com.
Okay, and that is the end of another wonderful educated session with Brian and yours truly, Joanne Cox. You can find me at justifiedjewel.com. So stay tuned for the next episode, but I'm not going to tell you. I want you to just come back and see what we have in store. So again, thank you for the viewers. Make sure you subscribe and bring a friend with you. Until then, I'll see you for the next episode.